Coaching, and it's time to tap your personal power and pull up a cup for this episode of the InPower Coffee Break. I'm here with our guest today, Sarah Baca with Medulin, to talk about the 3 types of brain state, which I don't even know where to start, but it's going to be awesome. And Mary Brody, who helps make all of this possible. Mary, welcome. And if you're live on this video, we want you to join the conversation and leave us a note in the chat box, and we'll bring you into the conversation. We hold these coffee breaks live every Tuesday from 1 to 1:30 Eastern, and we encourage you to join us live or to catch up with all the previous episodes on our iTunes podcast, where you can leave a review and help other people find it. We like to talk about a lot of different topics, including InPower strategies and topics that help you achieve work-life satisfaction, career satisfaction, and help you lead in a pro-human workplace. And unpacking what all of those means is really what we talk about every week. So let's get into it. Mary, you want to introduce Sarah for us, and we'll dive into the discussion?
Sure. Sarah is an Agile coach who has been coaching conscious ways of working for over a decade. She currently works as a Scrum Master and coach for Medulin. She's very passionate about creating workplaces where we put people over processes and creating cultures and processes that grow awesome teams and amazing products. And you can also find her over at Twitter, and she's at SJBaca3. And so SJBACA, the number 3.
Thank you. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right, what's a brain state? One of the 3 of them.
This is a theory that Dr. Becky Bailey teaches. She's actually a trainer for teachers with young children. And I learned it 15, 16 years ago with my stepchildren and then with my own children. So basically, if you take your fist and pretend like this is your brain, so this is your brain stem and your spine, then this is what we call your animal brain. So this is like the back of your head. This is what evolved first.
A lizard brain?
Yes, exactly, your lizard brain. And then you have this middle part that's your emotional brain. And then you have the front part that's your thinking brain. So when you're in fight or flight, panic, worried about your safety, you're asking, am I safe? You're thinking in that part of your brain. It's the animal lizard brain, where you only have fight, flight, or retreat as just 3 options. Then the middle part is the emotional part of your brain. That's where you're asking, am I cared for? Do I have a connection with the people around me? And then the last part, the executive state, or the thinking part, that's where you can innovate. That's when athletes talk about getting in the flow and everything going right. That's because they're in this part of their brain. So what we talk about is, as coaches and leaders and even team members, how do we help recognize which part of the brain we're working from and our teammates are working from, so we can help everyone move forward into that thinking part of the brain, so we can create solutions and ask intelligent questions. So that's what we'll talk about.
That's really interesting, and actually I'm glad you explained it that way, because I was thinking of it in a slightly different way. But so let me just put down a thought and see if this is the way you use that structure. So in one sense, we want to be up here thinking, right? That's how we tend to think we get the most done. But if we're not aware of what's going on in our emotional being,
right,
if we're not aware that we're not feeling safe, or that we're feeling safe and somebody else isn't,
yeah,
we can really make a lot of bad thinking and assumptions that don't really help us. And part of where I'm coming from on this is just that, we spend a lot of time at InPower Coaching helping people get into their emotional brain enough to get their emotional intelligence working for them, and improving the executive function. But what I hear you say is going further back can be helpful too. Like, make sure that you're in a safe space and that you're able to help other people be in a safe space.
Exactly. And we talk a lot about how you can get stuck in that safety, and then have someone asking you questions or wanting you to get in touch with your emotions and to connect with them, and you can't, because you're stuck in that lizard brain. So it's a progression. You can't just skip and go from crisis mode to thinking mode. I think we've all been on teams where it's constantly a crisis. You're always in fear for your job, or that you're going to be shamed because you did the wrong thing, or you're in this defensive mode, and like, why isn't this product being built? Why aren't our customers happy? Because everybody's in lizard brain all the time. And it's good to think about how we can progress through. And it's not that we're ignoring our emotions. It's that we're checking in with our emotions and saying, am I connected? You have to have that in order to move into the next part of your brain. But I absolutely think it's a whole body system where a big piece of this is checking in and saying, where am I now and how do I move to the part where I can actually ask questions, and get into that forward thinking.
Yeah, and actually that check-in thing is huge because that's what we're not doing when we get stuck, right?
Exactly.
And although I will say that there are a lot of people who check in, they realize they're stuck and they just assume okay, now I'm stuck, I have to, this is where I am. And there is a way to check in and accept, okay, I don't have to accept that I'm stuck, but I do have to accept that right now, safety or my emotional connections are the thing that are taking my energy, and I kind of have to deal with that before I can.
Absolutely. Right. And if we're feeling angry and frustrated because things aren't going our way or we feel out of control, we can take those deep breaths and get centered. And that's exactly how you do move out of that animal part of your brain, is by recognizing I may not feel in control, but I'm always in control of my reaction if I can't control my circumstances. So how do I recognize what I can control and move out of that animal brain, realize that I can be connected with my coworkers, or if I don't work in a place like that, with someone else who loves me, and try to get into that place where I can really think and be productive.
Yeah, and so that speaks a lot to mindfulness, right? I mean, that I teach this a lot, and people are like, well, doesn't that mean sitting around on the mountaintop meditating? And I'm like, no, mindfulness is being able to create that space where you can choose to react.
Right.
Choose how you react.
Yeah. And that's exactly what consciousness is. The wait. And that's what Becky Bailey calls her whole thing is conscious discipline, because it's geared towards young children, and they'll do something naughty and we'll react instead of taking that pause and then consciously choosing how we react, which then teaches them how to take that pause. And hopefully we have a whole world full of adults who know how to take that pause, check in, calm themselves down, and then react.
And show the children what it looks like.
Exactly. And it's so freaking hard, that it sounds so simple.
No, it doesn't at all.
Simple, but not easy.
Well, and I'm glad you made that point, because that was actually how, I used to be mindful, I would meditate and stuff. But the way I learned to apply it was through my children. They're doing exactly that. It was kind of realizing, wait a minute, I aspire to be this person that I'm not with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they were capable of triggering me in a way a lot of other people weren't.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Bailey talks a lot about when you're in that emotional state, what happens is the CD-ROM, as she calls it, that was written when you were a child, is what you automatically go into. So if you had a parent who was a yeller, you'll yell, and it'll be the thing you swore you would never, ever do to your children. And we do the same thing with our teams. The way I was raised, I shut down and retreat when I'm not feeling connected, when I'm in that emotional part of my brain. And I'll catch myself doing that at work. And so I've slowly had to try to rewire my brain to be conscious and make a decision. I'm going to speak up. I'm allowed to take up space and have an opinion. This is my opinion. Let's work together, instead of just retreating, which is what my CD-ROM tells me to do.
So here's something. So I'm gonna put words in your mouth. Because to me, what you just said is a demonstration of a core InPower principle, which is we start with ourselves. So if we want to be a good team member, if we want to be a good manager or leader or colleague or anybody, we have to start with ourselves and make ourselves capable of being a good contributor to that team. And that's how we make changes to the team.
Absolutely.
And we make those changes not by saying, I want the team to change, but by being the person that we want to be in that team, and then saying, we can all change this way.
It's amazing how powerful modeling is. And I've been really excited to see that in my own career, where I'll be working somewhere and I'm like, these people do not get what I'm telling them. But then later on to speak to them and then say, you were such a big influence on me because of the way you did this. Or, so even just working on yourself, I think, impacts people more than we know. Certainly more than if we talk to them and they weren't ready for our message.
Yes. And it's a way that I think women can lead very naturally and authentically. Not that men can't, but I think that the path feels very
Actually, we're not supposed to rock the boat, right? Because that makes you a not nice woman. So it's definitely.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't rock the boat, but it means that you can lead by example. And when you choose to rock the boat, you choose to rock the boat.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to bring Mary into this because I know she has a lot of insights, and I'm wondering, Mary, when you kind of understood Sarah's perspective on this, like how did that open up for you, how you can participate in teams and with other people, you know, in a way, in a better way?
Yeah, when I first heard Sarah's presentation, this was a while back at an Agile conference, and what the client I was working with at the time, they were going through a lot of their own changes. You could see layoffs coming, right? And I could see, based on their behavior, like that's where I could almost have like an applied sense of what she was talking about, because it was like, oh my goodness, these people are in lizard brain. They're afraid for their jobs. This explains why the way they're attacking it is fight or flight. A lot of attacks, very vicious. Then I was in a group where people were more building bridges, and it's because, well, this group that we were in, we all felt secure. So we all got to executive brain, and they couldn't understand why our product came along. Unfortunately, the company took the product away, which is when we all went into lizard brain, and we were all like, screw this. But we did get there because we were feeling like we were feeling secure. We were feeling emotionally connected to each other. We felt like we could rely on each other. And this is when we had all the great ideas and the great product could happen. And I've noticed that on a number of teams. Like when we're all feeling secure, then everything goes great. When you start seeing, it really comes to like that whole layoff thing, right? The layoff, the job security. It really is job security, I would say. That's when, lack of a better expression, the monkey poo stuff starts. And the
Throwing poop.
It gets weird, and I think people, they will just go after each other about the smallest things and do what they need. It feels like they're doing what they need to do to survive. And if that initial need is met, then I think you get into the emotional, can you trust your coworkers? And are they part of your group? And if that emotional connection isn't there, that also gets into some interesting interactions. And I've seen that too. Like the people's jobs are secure, but they don't feel secure with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. And that gets just as maddening. And the drama, the politics. But if you have a group that's doing all of that, yeah, they do great work, and they let a lot of that get a lot of the personal stuff out of the way.
And I guess it all comes down to safety. I mean, in that sense, it's consistent with Maslow's hierarchy, right? And similar to that, which is that like when we feel like we have all the basics we need for life, which is Maslow's, food, water, air, which the corporate equivalent of it, the career equivalent of it is feeling like you have a job and a paycheck, and that is something you can kind of count on, or even if it's not a paycheck, you have an income stream. For those of us who are entrepreneurs, I know that when I can't see my pipeline very far, I start feeling uncomfortable and on that safety level. So I think it's pretty consistent with humanity, right? So, Sarah, how do you apply this, in your work? Like, how do you make your teams more effective using these principles?
There are ways to build safety with teams. One is rituals, which if you're an Agile coach, Scrum Master, there's lots of rituals in those processes. And
what does that look like?
And it looks like a daily stand-up every morning for 15 minutes that people know they can count on. A retrospective where you're going to reflect on what just happened, and they'll feel heard and like their opinions matter. And then you come out of that with an action item that makes a difference. So but you have this regular cadence of things that happen. If you're a parent, it might be Christmas traditions or Sunday morning pancakes. That's how you build safety. So I try to make sure that we're doing those things with teams, and at a company level, if you can, where you're building these rich traditions to create safety and connection in the group. And that helps people move up into those higher thinking part of their brains. I use the thought of moving out of my lizard brain. Really, you talked about mindfulness and meditation. The breath is really the best way to move out of that lizard brain, because you cannot be taking deep breaths and be in a lizard brain at the same time. It's not physically possible. So if you're taking deep, calming breaths and calming yourself down, you're automatically moving yourself forward. So I find myself using that a lot when I get frustrated or when I'm nervous or anxious. Just try to return to the breath, and use those mindfulness techniques, like little things like focusing on how it feels when the air enters my nostrils and when it exits. So my brain stops racing with, I've got to do this, and then I've got to do this, and then that could go wrong. And, things like that. Creating intentional opportunities for connection with people. And that means sitting down and looking them in the eyeballs, whether it's virtual or real life, and having a conversation about real things that matter, not just work. And then communicating up to leadership that's saying, you shall build this thing, does not work unless those two, parts of the foundation is built. And sometimes it's really hard because it's challenging to create an ROI from, team lunches. But it's really important and valuable. So I feel like it's a huge part of my job to be constantly banging that drum, that if we want to have amazing products that make our clients really, really happy, we must invest in these other things, or it simply won't happen.
And I think, we've had a Mary Schaefer on here and talked about some of these same challenges from a totally different perspective, which is, like, what's the way we talk about it there is, what's the business case for running a pro-human workplace, right? Yeah. Because to the extent business is a spreadsheet, there's absolutely no rationale for what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's just money stuff.
Yeah, it looks like total overhead. On the other hand, when you look at the correlations between the companies and the businesses who do invest in their employees and their output product, the correlation is there. And then when you look at it with your common sense of human, knowledge and the kind of thing you're talking about, which makes total sense. When you look at it with your emotional intelligence, it makes total sense. All that really doesn't tend to fit on a spreadsheet. And so it seems like, to the extent that we just want to say, look, all the rationale for running a good business doesn't have to be on a spreadsheet, we could be open to this. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, when the numbers aren't there, it is a spreadsheet exercise to figure out what do we cut, right? And it's not a perfect science by any means. How do you find when you're talking to leaders, how do you find them open to these ideas?
I think it really depends on their own personal experience and their own ideas about the soft stuff and whether or not it has value. And that's one reason why I've ended up at Midland, I think, is because this is a company that really does value their people, and they recognize that they want to make their clients happy, that they need to value their people and treat them well. And our HR director, his name's Mike Moore, he and I talk about this kind of stuff frequently because he knows I'm slightly obsessed with it. So we talk about, like, what kind of rituals can we as a company have? How can we do peer-to-peer kudos so that people are being encouraged and reinvigorated and recognized by their peers, and create those types of rituals as a company. So I think I've worked with some leaders who, it doesn't matter how many studies you show them and how you compare team A to team B, and how much more successful team A is because they have this foundation versus team B. Some people, like, you can't convince someone who's totally against it. I think there's, just at some point where you have to admit that it's not possible.
Maybe not in that moment. I mean, I take what you're saying, and it is always interesting how people have those wake-up moments.
Yeah.
It comes from different types of experiences where all of a sudden they go, oh, maybe this is one of those things that soft stuff can help me with.
Right.
So sometimes being there at the right time is probably the best solution. And something else now, this is pre-staging a conversation that we're going to have, Mary, I forgot what date, but coming up. Maybe we can even invite you back if you're available to talk about what happens when you get laid off. Or what happens, forget getting laid off, what happens to the scenario Mary shared with us earlier, when, like, layoffs layoffs are coming. I've been in this situation. You know layoffs are coming. You know people on your team are going to get laid off. But you don't know who. You don't know when. For the people who don't get laid off, you don't know what resources they're going to have left. And as a leader, you have to try to create as safe a space as you can to make sure the work can get done between that moment where it's like, oh, wow, I know it's coming. They think it's coming. How do I create a safe space so we're somewhat productive leading up to that? And dealing with the fears, which, as you're pointing out, are really legitimate and core. Very basic. Got any advice?
I think it's hard because you want to be transparent and let people know what's going on, but at the same time, you don't want to freak them out unnecessarily. So I think if I can imagine if I was in a culture like that where I felt like layoffs were going to happen, feeling like my boss genuinely cared for me would matter, even if my role was not going to be with the company anymore. At least I would know that this person cares for me and has my back. And whenever I've been a manager of people, I've tried to treat it that way, that I'm more like a career coach. And that's actually how Modulin does it, is they don't have bosses. We have career coaches. And then domain lead who help set expectations. And then I have a career coach who helps me coach me in my career. So I would hope that as a leader, I would see my role with these people as their career coach. And if that career isn't necessarily with my company, I can at least help everyone. And I did even without layoffs, on the way. Let's talk about building your personal brand and your resume and how do you sell yourself, because we're all constantly selling ourselves even internally, and help everyone get stronger like that. So if it does happen that your path ends at this company, we'll set you up for success at your next one and find out what skills you want to acquire for the next place.
Yeah, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I'm just harkening back to my own experience, but the hardest part is usually when you're the person doing that, except for maybe your company where you have career coaches, your bosses aren't doing that for you.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about the problem of being in middle management anyway, even when things are going well, right? And there's some legitimate reasons for that sometimes, which we don't have to go into right now. But being in that middle level is just really hard all the time, because you're being asked to lead in a way that most of the time you're not being led.
Yeah.
And that is just really hard. And we have to acknowledge here to everybody who's watching and listening that if you're in that position, it is really hard. And you really need to shore up your own support structure and your own support network, your personal and professional lives to support you.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is find a mentor throughout your networks or connections through other ways, or have a professional coach who can help coach you personally. So, yeah, and I know for myself that's absolutely what I have to do, because if I don't, then my cup becomes empty, and I'm not a very nice person when I allow that to happen. So self-care is super important for everyone else's safety.
Yes, it's true. And actually, I think when you're doing that, when you're investing in creating or you're leveraging your own support structure, you're investing in your own sense of safety and your own sense of perspective and emotional connectivity, which makes you able to function at an executive level, right?
Yeah. And make decisions about this company or the next company, or whatever you want to do.
And actually, so this brings me to something that I wanted to say earlier when we were talking, is that there's this constant seesaw between being an individual looking out for yourself and being a part of a group, which could be the company, right? And when we go through these stressful times, particularly related to layoffs, it gets confusing in our little brain, all three of them. Am I acting as an individual, or am I acting for the business? And I want to be loyal to the business, but I don't think they're being loyal to me. So maybe I need to be loyal to me so that I can feel personally safe. And part of what I hear you saying is that a company can, by caring about the employee safety, the company can indicate, you can be loyal to me. We're going to be loyal to you, which doesn't, by the way, give me, we're going to employ you for the rest of your life. That's not the deal we're making. We agree to be transparent to the extent we can. We agree to know that your safety matters and to do what we can to give you a severance or warning or time or outplacement or something. And we ask you to be loyal to us and to do your work, as long as we're employing you. I guess, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I like to think of us all almost as consultants, because we're being hired pretty much every day. I show up and I either produce or I don't. If you think of yourself as you're in a working relationship with your employer and they don't really owe you anything, you don't owe them anything until you have this transaction, where I'm providing you a service and you're providing me a service, and to keep me at this organization, you're going to provide me with these benefits in exchange for that service, so I can choose to either provide this opportunity and my services to you, or I can go somewhere else and provide those services to someone else. I think we as a culture are slowly moving from this, 30 years ago, where I'm at this company, I'm going to get the gold watch, I'm going to be there for 50 years, to where we're all now independent consultants working for ourselves and showing value to our companies so that we can stay or get the promotion or, whatever, and trying to make, and I consciously try to think, how can I be the most valuable to the most number of people, both because I like helping people and also because I feel like that helps ensure my job security, because the more helpful I am, the least likely they are to get rid of me. So whatever I can do, to help out, then I will.
I think first of all, I completely agree with you. And secondly, I'm sort of thinking, even though we're out of time in this one, I would love to have this conversation about how to be a full-time employee with a consultant mentality. or how to think about our careers as independent contractors, even when we're employed. I don't know the right headline for that, but I think this is really important, because ability for managing our own careers, first of all, is very empowering, right? Because now we're choosing to be at this company or not.
Right.
And we take a more proactive role, whether, in continuing to be valuable.
Absolutely.
And to want to create our work so that it makes us more valuable in case we want to leave.
Yeah, and in order to do that, I think you really have to focus on your own unique skill set too, which is a big mojo boost. What can I do that no one else can do? What is Sarah Baca Incorporated providing? What service is that? And it's really feels good to say, nobody else can do this exactly the way that I do it. If I'm not a good fit for this company, then I will find a company for which I am a good fit. So like you said, you're really empowered.
And to deal with that, you have to be constantly aware of that lizard brain working against you, right? Because the lizard brain is down there going, no, you'll never be successful.
Let me keep this little job that I hate, because if I don't have it, I'll die.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what the next segment is we have to do, whether it's, like tamping down the lizard brain or me ink or I don't know what it is. We have to have this conversation. I hope you come back and join us for that.
Thank you.
And Mary, let's put our little brains together to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, because I think another thing that keeps coming up is the people situation and the value of people in an organization. Like the bottom line are people, but I think if you're a leader who has gone through the people thing and how much people matter, you find money. Right? Yeah. That was one of the things I started picking up. I'm like, hey, if you're a leader, you can find money out of the people thing. And that, like when you're saying, like when you're working as a consultant, you value the people, you value the relationships. It becomes more about the relationships and less about the company. Yeah, that also goes to a larger conversation.
Yeah. It does, and it speaks to being able to think about resources strategically, and your people are not just a resource because they take up space and salary, but their capabilities and their drives and their attitudes, including I want to be of service and I want to continue to be valuable, are definite resources that you can't just find hanging on the trees. They are very highly valuable. Okay, we're out of time, which is really too bad because I feel like we're just getting killed for hours. Exactly. Well, I want to thank you, Sarah, for opening this up. And is there a URL, a website that people could either learn more about you or about this topic that you'd like to send people to?
I have a blog that is very much much a work in progress. sjbaca.com, sjbaca.com.
Okay.
But,
we'll have to look at featuring you on our blog too, and bring your voice forward. And thank you, Mary, for introducing us to Sarah.
Thank you, Mary.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the InPower Coffee Break. Please visit us at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com to see upcoming topics, to get past recordings. Find us on YouTube, find us on iTunes, and learn how you can join us live in the future.